Good morning and welcome to the Stewartry Area Committee. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome the positive news members may have seen on Friday, the 16th of May, that Dumfries and Galloway Council announced that the Kirkcudbright Bridge would reopen under single-lane traffic for cars and light vans on or before Wednesday, the 2nd of July, 2025. A 3-ton weight limit and width restrictions will be enforced when the bridge reopens. Traffic controls will be put in place that will allow cars and light vans up to 3 tons to use the bridge. A single-lane chicane system with width restrictions will be installed that will help control access and limit the weight on the bridge. A new lowered speed limit of 20 miles per hour will also help to control traffic speeds and reduce the impact on the bridge. New curbing, bollards and large solid planter boxes will form the chicane gateways and prevent drivers of vehicles over 3 tons from attempting to cross. Temporary traffic lights will manage the one-way flow of vehicles. In addition, the single-lane system for vehicle space will be allocated for a dedicated cycleway next to the existing footway access the bridge. I'm sure members will agree that this is good news for the community of Kirkcudbright. Members should also be aware that drop-in events will be held in Kirkcudbright on Wednesday the 21st of May from 4 till 7 p.m. in a pop-up gazebo at the Merse side of the bridge, and Tuesday the 27th of May from 5 till 7:30 at the Johnstone. This will give the community and business the opportunity to speak to council officers and learn more about the short-term, long-term options for Kirkcudbright Bridge. Officers are keeping ward members up to date through monthly or as when required meetings, and a dedicated report will be presented to members of the Economy and Infrastructure Committee on the 3rd of June 2023, which will be shared with Stewartry Area Committee members. Officers will continue to provide public updates through dedicated web pages, Kirkcudbright Bridge Closure, Dumfries and Galloway Council. I would like to let you know at this point that and we'll keep ward members updated with monthly updates. Officers will continue to provide public updates through its dedicated web page, Kirkcudbright Bridge Closure, updates to Dumfries and Galloway Council's social media channels. I would like to let everyone know at this point that this area committee meeting will be live streamed on Teams and that a recording will be made available shortly after the finish of the meeting. Members may notice when calling members to speak or refer to them formally and using their title, e.g. Councillor Smith, so that it is clear who are councillors and who by the process of elimination are officers. Remote participants, please follow the code of good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you are not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you are in the hall, you can do this on your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be taken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting so we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly, taking time and speaking directly to the microphone when making contributions. When referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required to propose an alternative or recommendation. We are joined this morning by our Ward Youth Councillor, Stuart Walker. Welcome, Stuart. Are we okay? We'll move on to point 1, Sedron apologies and Chair's approval of membership remote participation. Can I ask the clerk, Claire Rogerson, for the Sedron apologies and which members are in the room and those linked by Microsoft Teams, please?
Okay, thank you, Chair. We've got 8 members present this morning, 7 here at Tar Road, We've got Councillor Dickie Campbell present on Teams. Apologies from Councillor Blake. And as you've already said, we've got Stuart Walker, Youth Council rep, here with us as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I confirm my agreement for remote participation. Item 2, declarations of interest. Councillor Stitt.
Thanks, Chair. It's item 6. I've got a statement of connection as I'm Chair of the Stewartry Sports Council, but I'm going to remain in the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe.
Also a member of Stewartry Sports Council, but will stay in.
So that's the declarations confirmed of interest. Are there any other declarations? If not, Councillor
Also a member of Stewartry Sports Council, thanks.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 3, minutes of previous meeting held 19th March 2025. Members are asked to approve these minutes. Happy to approve, members? Councillors? Young? Yes, everyone else? Yep, all happy to approve, thank you. Item 4, 1st of April 2024 to the 31st of March 2025, end of year assessment of schools, quality and curriculum service plan 2024 to 2025, report by Executive Director, Education Skills and Community Wellbeing. The first report we are being asked to consider today is the end of year assessment of schools, quality and curriculum service plan 2024 to 2025 in relation to performance for the Stewartry area. It is good to see in the appendices that performance figures are set against those for the rest of Dumfries and Galloway. This offers a clear comparative picture for members and the public. I'm also particularly encouraged to read about the 2 HMIE inspections, mentioning the strengths of Kirkcudbright and Dalbeattie primary schools. I would like to welcome the meeting education officers, Alison Chambers and Kenny Pullen, along with head teachers from Stephen Foster, Castle Douglas High School and Dalry Secondary and Anthony Tuffery Kirkcudbright Academy. Welcome. Thank you to the head teachers for taking time to attend this committee. I'm sure members will appreciate that while you can answer generic questions, there are sensitivities around questions or comments identifying specific schools or individuals. I'll ask members to bear in mind when asking questions. I'll open the floor to members' questions and comments. Councillor Lowe.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering why, if this is the report for 24-25, so it must cover last year's summer exam period, why we have data not yet available virtually all the way through for the various levels of exams that were taken, because that must be available and we're about to sit the next set of exams. So why don't we have that data for last year?
Thank you. Do we have a comment? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Lowe. So this is our 3rd area committee and it's come up with all the other area committees as well. It's the reporting periods that we have within the council year as opposed to the academic year. We do have the data that sits with the academic year, and there is considerations to be made around how we best report that to you in a more timely fashion. We have the elected member seminar on Friday regarding attainment and looking particularly at the LGBF data, but certainly it has been raised before in the other area committees, and it will be looked at again in terms of how do we report in a more timely fashion to all of our area committees as well as our Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing Committee.
Thank you. Our Youth Representative, Stuart Walker.
In regards to item 4.3 on page 21, there's one of the targets not met with acceptable limits for the current exclusion rates. I was wondering, what is the current process in place prior to exclusions, and is it a research-based process, or do we have any evidence that it's actually successful, seeing as it isn't currently within acceptable limits? Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd like to respond.
Thank you for your question, Stuart. I'll give you the generic answer in terms of what we do like Scottish Government-wide, and then I will pass over to my colleagues, Mr Foster and Mr Tuffrey, to then give you sort of some anecdotals from the school point of view. So we have policy and practice in place which is directed by Scottish Government about inclusion within all of our schools, but we recognise that within all of our schools, exclusion is a tool that can be used along with other tools to ensure that young people, if they have to be out of school for a period of time, there's then a plan in place to bring that young person back in a safe way to ensure that they are then getting their needs met. So we do have an inclusive practice where all of our schools are trying to ensure that young people can come to school and can access school on a daily basis. However, when that does not work, when the wheels fall off a little bit, then we do have that opportunity to exclude young people to ensure that then we can get a plan around that young person to then bring them back into the school. But within a school level, there's different methodology used, whether it's research-based as your question. When it's looked at in totality at Scottish Government level, it's very much about what are the needs of a young person, how do we then ensure that we are meeting those needs. But in a school-based level, it's very much about the school community. So I'll hand over to Mr Foster and then to Mr Tuffrey to describe what they do within their own schools.
So within our school, what we have is there's a policy called Included, Engaged and Involved Part 2. So that gives you direction as to what you would do pre-exclusion. So within that, there is a series of checklists if someone is at risk from exclusion. And then the expectation for the schools and for my schools is for us to go through those checklists, because you're looking at what supports can we put in place, what mitigations, what things do we need to do to help meet needs better. Some schools, certainly my schools, we're a nurture school, so that means that the teachers receive extra training, and again that's meeting needs, understanding when a young person is struggling, what is it we can do to help meet those needs. So there's a variety of services that you would also use. There's things like pupil plans, individual education plans as well. If we were to speak to the data for this year, this academic year, the Stewartry is actually the lowest exclusion rate across the authority. So I think what we are doing is working. That's notwithstanding obviously the point that you've made. And then there's a lot of engagement with parents, carers, families, etc. as well, and then other service within that planning to try and reduce the number of exclusions. I always think with exclusions, you're talking about there is a need to plan. Something has gone wrong, so it is appropriate at times because there is a need either through health and safety or something has to be put in place that the school needs time to actually do that, rather than just everybody comes back the next day after an incident happens.
Do you have a follow-on?
Yeah, just to add a little bit on that, and obviously what we do in Kirkcudbright is very similar to Mr Foster. What I would just say is it's important to remember that exclusion is not a punishment, and that's not how it's seen, that when exclusions occur, primarily it is so that we can get people around a table to discuss a way forward, and that's multi-agency people, so the time dependency is quite often on being able to get people into a room, nothing more than that. But it's not a punishment process, it's very much about making plans for a future for a young person.
Councillor Young, you had your hand up.
I did, thank you, Chair. In your opening commentary on this particular item, you said the figures provide a clear comparative picture of what's going on. I beg to differ. I think we're struggling to see any trends, and the data not yet available comment has been responded to But why not offer up the previous years, you know, 22, 23, 21, 22, and we can see what figures are increasing and heading towards targets or even hopefully surpassing targets. One thing I've commented on previously is the lack of trends. It's very difficult to spot trends to see, especially how schools in the Stewartry are going. I mean, Mr. Foster there said that we have the lowest exclusion rates in the whole of the authority. That's very interesting to know that our Stewartry area is doing so well in that particular area, but we're unable to see how well the Stewartry schools are doing in terms of academic excellence or university entrances, etc. I would love to see more figures so we can actually spot trends and hopefully pat ourselves in the back that things are improving. Thank you, Chair.
Any comment?
Thank you, Councillor Young, and I will refer back to my point around the data and what data you get and whether or not you get it in a timely fashion. I think that there is a lot of data out there, and it's just about ensuring that we get the right data in front of you at the right time. So I acknowledge what you're saying. We will be tasked by our elected members to ensure that we do get the data in front of you. Some of that data that you have mentioned will be shared at the elected member seminar on Friday, and again that will be give us time to look at the detail and not just the headlines. In terms of your Stewartry comment around the exclusions, I do have a bit more data because it is described per thousand, and I think sometimes that can be less easy to understand. So just to give a bit of clarity around that in comparison, if we look at mainstream in the Stewartry, the exclusions, there was a total of 8 exclusions in our primary and there were 11 in our secondary. And for our looked after young people, there was 3 in the primary and none in the secondary. So we do have that level of detail. It's just about how we get that in front of you in a timely fashion.
Councillor Young, satisfied? Thank you. You want to follow up on that, Councillor Young?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. I suppose I'm looking at, I mean, these papers are for elected members. Now, if I was say a parent with children moving into a Stewartry area and I had a choice, suppose my children had an aptitude towards STEM subjects and I wanted to know which of the secondary schools has been achieving the highest grades in particular subjects, where would I find that information?
Again, I'm cautious in terms of creating league tables. When we put that detail out there, you then do create a league table. All schools do publish their data on an annual basis. They have that as part of the reporting to parents. And so therefore, my suggestion would be you would get that through the school media channels. However, what we do not publish is that sort of league table approach of all of our secondary schools.
Thank you. Councillor Drysdale.
Morning, members. Good to see you, Mr Tuffrey, Mr Foster. Thank you for attending today. And Susan, thanks for the report. I'd like to congratulate you on the figures with regards to exclusion rates. So that's where I'm going to start on this one. But I'm going to discuss something different, if that's okay. I brought it up at the last area committee, and I've had discussions with Stuart and the youth work teams over the last couple of months, and also through social work, Susan. And it was with regards to sexual health for children. So it's 4.4, making children feel safe, happy and supported. And whilst I accept that schools aren't directly responsible for children's well-being and welfare in terms of directing them to sexual health clinics, I am hearing it time and time again from a lot of groups, especially groups that girls attend. This has been sort of ongoing for the last year or so. I happened to attend a board meeting, which I'm part of, for Women's Aid, not last week, but the week before. And they directed me to the most incredible webpage that I had no idea about, even though I'd been pushing for this information for some time, and I haven't shared it with Mr Tuffrey or Mr Foster as yet, but I would really like to ask the council to push for this information to go out to the schools so that all young people have access to the information about the sexual health clinics that do take place. And these are not, confined to the hours of 4:30, because this was causing our young people so many challenges to get to these sexual health clinics for all sorts of different reasons that young people have every right to attend these. And in fact, we need to really promote that, Susan. So I'm just wondering if I could share this with you, this link, that I had put out on my social media, and hopefully that can be cascaded down to all the children within the schools. And I'd be interested to hear your response, possibly Stuart's, if he's willing to speak on it, and any of the head teachers as well, just to see where we stand on that. Because if children are wanting to attain and the attainment levels are to get better, they need fully supported with not just their mental health, but also their physical. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Drysdale. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you offline of what the website says and how we then share that using perhaps gov.delivery or through the school channels themselves. That's not a problem.
That's great. Through yourself. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, it's a very brief one. On page 20, we've got proportion of school leavers entering positive destinations. Can we just have a definition of what a positive destination is? Because it's a very high percentage, 95.5. Thanks.
Would you like to respond?
Thank you for your comment, your question, Councillor McFarlane. So positive destinations, there is a breadth of how we describe where young people have gone. So I can't remember it all off the top of my head, but I will try my best, but I can give that information to you. So we have higher education, we have further education, we have formal training, we have informal training, we have work experience, we have other experience providers, and the ones I can think off the top of my head, and then the ones that are sitting in your 5.1 that we don't know are economically inactive, but seeking, or economically inactive and not seeking, and then we have our unknown young people who we are not sure where they are. What I would say with positive destinations, that as an authority we are working with our schools in terms with our head teachers and our employability coordination group leads within our schools, SDS, and our partners within employability partnership, to ensure that we are making sure that every young person is known first and foremost, and that we are trying to support them to get into a positive destination. We do get to the point where if we still are unclear of where that young person is, we do door knocking, and we do that through the local authority, but we are working with our schools, with our parents, with the partners, to try and ensure that we have no unknowns and that everyone is within is economically active of some way. However, there are some occasions where they're not economically active. For example, if a young person is pregnant, then they would be economically inactive at that time.
Thank you. Councillor Drysdale.
Can I just make an apology, members, and to yourself? Sorry, I do apologise, Alison. I've been calling you Susan, and that is incorrect. I'm definitely needing to up the patches. Sorry.
No apology required, Councillor Drysdale. I've been called many things many times.
Okay, any further questions before we move on to recommendations? Members are asked to, one, review the end of year summary of performance for the Stewartry area for 1st of April 2024 to 31st of March 2025 as set out in a paragraph 4.3 and the appendix, and two, consider the area-based achievements and developments as detailed in the key achievements section of this report, paragraph 4.4.1 to 4.4.6, and consider any aspects of performance to be referred to the relevant service committee. Are members happy to agree the recommendations? Okay. Thank you for joining us this morning. We'll now move on to item 5. Development of the regional parking strategy, delivery plan, Stewartry, report by Interim Assistant Director, Transport and Infrastructure. We now have a report on the development and the regional parking strategy delivery plan for the Stewartry area. This report asks us to consider the development of regional parking strategy delivery plan and the progress being made with the decriminalised parking enforcement application for parking enforcement. This is a very detailed report, and I thank the report authors for the level of detail included. Tony Topping is available to answer members' questions and comments. Members, any questions or comments? Councillor Lowe.
Yeah, thank you, and good morning, Tony. I'm assuming that the first pages of this report from page 23 onwards is just the standard report that's gone to all the area committees, because it just seems to be that the only particular mentions are of the parking in Dumfries, and parking zones and the sort of badges that you have to put in the cars. So I'm assuming that's just an introduction, because it's not focused on the Stewartry. But the other one is just... it's not really a correction, but it's maybe a fact, is on page 39, under 2.3.1, Dalbeattie Bar Hill Road is a development that was down as 30 homes, and actually it's a maximum of 30, but only 12 are going in. And because it's private land, in fact, all the parking is going to be within the planning off-road. So is that really part of our planning strategy for roads? Because every house is going to have at least 2 car parking spaces, and they're well off the road anyway. Thank you.
Tony?
Yeah, okay, through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Lowe, for your inquiries there. So, with regards to the first point, yes, there is a section 4.7, 4.8 that is specific to Stewartry. 4.9 onwards does talk about the decriminalised parking enforcement application in general, and that's why we have said we have started working in Dumfries first, looking at the orders for Dumfries. I'll just reiterate again, this is very much, this is still a draft version of the report. There'll be further input from both council officers, internal stakeholders, and again, it's still open to members. If there are any further concerns, that you can bring them to us and we can include it in it. With regards to the comment on page 39, yeah, this under section 2.3.1, we were just doing some research into what are future housing developments within the Stewartry area, and the development at Bar Hill Road was just identified as one of them, and I fully appreciate it. It will be a private development. However, the roads themselves within there will eventually become adopted by the council. But if you're saying there's 12 units, they'll have their own off-road private driveways, then yes, it's not an issue for us at the moment. But the plan there was just to identify all potential housing developments that are coming up within the Stewartry, so we are aware of them for any forthcoming actions or consideration.
Councillor Lowe?
Yeah, so just, I mean, a clarification on that, being in touch with that particular developer. Is it possible, will we be told once the road is adopted? Because obviously there's only 5 homes in there at the moment and it's all still plots. So it's still private until full access is given for the bins or whatever.
Tony?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yes, so you were just asking if you could be informed when the roads will be adopted. Is that the... Yeah, it will be down the line once the roads have been installed and checked by the roads planning team to ensure that they have been built to the correct standards. And I think there's usually a period of time before the council then adopt them. I think it's a 12-month period that the developer is still responsible for maintenance before we will then formally adopt the roads.
Okay, Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you very much, Tony, for the report. I just wanted to draw your attention to 4.3, whereby we're going to look at the delivery plans to capture and respond to challenges for parking capacity, Tony. And it then goes on in the sister report on page 45, between 5.3.2 and 5.3.6. I just would like it recorded, if possible, that we do need to make sure that this does actually happen with regards to talking to local communities for parking potentially. We are looking at hubs, transport hubs across the region. We're not sure yet actually what that will bring us in terms of bus service. And we need to remember, of course, in the West that we have real difficulties with our more remote constituents getting in and out of WT, Castle Douglas and Kirkcudbright. And with the new system in place, parking is going to become a little bit harder, a bit more challenging, which is fair enough because that links with our active travel objectives. However, we need to make sure that people can continue to shop, Tony. So it was just to say, can we make sure that local communities are spoken to, because there are opportunities certainly in one of our towns for additional parking spaces should they be required for the overflow, working with a couple of businesses within this particular town for some extra parking should it be required. So obviously with that will come forward, I think, to the next few committees going forward in the next year or two while this enforcement is being looked at. Just need some assurances on that. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Tony, if you'd like to respond.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Drysdale. So, yes, I actually had a meeting the other day with the Luff funding team that are looking at these transport hubs, one of them being actually up at Market Hill Car Park in Castle Douglas. There's a few others across the region as well where they're looking at enhanced EV charging points as well for electric buses, active travel, cycle parking, and again, in improvements to the existing EV charging, you know, the more advanced rapid chargers, etc. So we are currently liaising with those teams on that, and that'll give us an opportunity to update this report, especially for the Stewartry, where we know these transport hubs will be going in. And with regards to the communities, I believe they will be consulting with the local community groups and community councils taking these forwards. But yeah, overall the delivery plan will very much be still a live document, and we are aware that things will happen over the next few years, new developments, once we've introduced the parking officers, certain things that we will want to keep it flexible and still be able to respond to the needs of the public and local businesses and residents. So be assured it will be taken into account.
Thank you. Councillor Howie.
Thank you, Chair. Now, Tony, it's on page 26, recruitment plan programme. Can we please ensure that we make maximum use of the redeployment pool to try and fill these vacancies in future? You're well aware of the deficit that we're running at in the council. We cannot afford to have people sitting in the redeployment pool if they could be better employed. So just a plea that you make best use of that. The following one is on page 35 in the Cicero report, and it is in paragraph 114 in the final sentence. These differences mean it is likely that varying and bespoke arrangements will be required for the operation, control, management and enforcement of parking. Does that give local members an opportunity to influence how parking will be enforced within their particular district?
Thank you. Tony, can you respond?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thank you for your question, Councillor Howie. Yeah, with regards to recruitment, obviously the first part of our recruitment was we recruited Ailsa, that's with me today. Ailsa started with us just before Christmas. She's our parking team lead. So going forward, we will be recruiting parking officers, and we will need to do job evaluations, create new job descriptions and person specifications, because the council doesn't have any parking officers at the moment, so they will be very much new roles. Once these roles have been evaluated, the first thing we will be doing through HR will be to go to the likes of the redeployment pool to see if there's existing staff that would be suitable for these roles, because obviously parking officers will need to train them. They'll be very much a frontline service. They'll need to be trained in things like conflict management. They'll need body cams. They might not be the most popular of people to start with when they are out issuing tickets. So we need people with certain characteristics that we'll be able to deliver on that. But yes, definitely before we go out externally or internally to recruit, we will be checking the redeployment pool for available staff. With regards to your second point, what page was it again? It was 35. Yes. So as part of the regional parking strategy, report, we had based it on 6 officers to be employed, to be situated across the region, with a few full-time, well, all of them full-time, but deployed in some in certain areas, and others having more of a remit to go around to some of the more rural towns and villages. So there will be some opportunity. However, decriminalised parking is for the region, and it does mean it can be enforced at any town, at any road or street across the region. However, once we start to roll it out, there'll be the first month we'll take a softer approach. We won't go out heavy-handed, start fining people from day one. So there will be some scope to engage with members in terms of where we do situate the officers to start with, because obviously as we go forward there'll be certain towns during, it could be for like tourist seasonal times when there's a higher level of visitors coming to certain towns, that we might need more officers to enforce the parking then. So it's the first time we've done something like this, so it will be very much, we'll have to try and test the best way to do it, and we will welcome feedback and input from members in order that we can maximise how we do enforce and control parking. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report, Tony. A note on page 44, it states that there are 22 council-operated car parks. Now, a lot of these will sit in common good lands, such as the Harbour and Car Park in Kirkcudbright and Market Hill and Castle Douglas. Now, Castle Douglas councillors are well aware that if you consider the caravan park in Castle Douglas, it makes about £70,000 profit per year. None of that sees its way back into Castle Douglas Common Good Fund. Now, there may well be profits from the new parking strategy, especially with electric charging machines. It would depend on what the rate is. Would there be any consideration of feeding financial profits back to local common good funds when they are using common good land for parking?
Great question. Tony, could you answer that?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thanks for your question, Councillor Young. Yeah, very good question. We're moving into the scope of the EV charging is obviously covered by our fleet management team that install the charging points. We will be responsible for the enforcement of the parking within the car parks themselves. Obviously, there's no parking charges for these car parks. However, once our new car park order is advertised and implemented, it does mean that if there's people in certain car parks where we have got time restrictions, they can then be fined for those. I think we need to look at, we have considered this before, and obviously any revenue that we were going to making from parking fines in the first instance was going towards paying for the parking officers and to be put back into maintaining and the upgrade of our council car parks, whether it's keeping the lines refreshed, filling in potholes, making sure they're well lit and secure. So we have had this conversation before about common good car parks, and I can assure you that we're still discussing that with legal, and if need be, we will come back to area committees with proposals for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Tony. Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Tony, looking at page 37, and it talks about once the DPE powers are granted and such like, and it talks about vehicles parked inappropriately. Would that include, I've got a number of questions, would that include vehicles charging EV points when they're not charging? So people who think that because they have an electric vehicle, they can park in charging points without having to charge. Are we going to have consideration for where we have disc parking and it's time limited, the fact that certain vehicles, if it's not a rapid charger, would take longer than that to charge? So will there be some sort of dispensation for that to allow them to charge appropriately? Further to that, on page 45, it says at present no on-street control parking zones exist. But on page 38, it says a stay over 1 hour is permitted on King Street in Castle Douglas with no return permitted within an hour. So is what we're talking about on page 45 a different type of control? And lastly, again on page 45, we've talked about towns and large towns, and we're predominantly looking at Dalbeattie, Castle Douglas and Kirkcudbright. But I recently put an EMES in relation to signage for parking at New Galloway. Does that mean that that would be further down the list, or will that still be included as part of the rolling programme? Thanks.
Tony, can you respond to those questions?
Yes, through you, Chair. Thanks for your questions, Councillor McFarlane. So yes, in the first instance with regards to EV, yes, well, if people are parked inappropriately in a bay and they're not, say, an electric vehicle, and they're charged in an electric vehicle bay, then they can get fined. With regards to the charging aspect, I mean, if it's the rapid charger, then they're maybe only got to be there for an hour or two. And again, if they overstay, they're welcome. They will be liable to a fine. There'll be other charging points where local residents might want to come and leave their vehicle to charge overnight. So that will be allowed in certain car parks as well. So yeah, we will have certain powers within council-controlled car parks to ensure that they do conform to the rules. There'll also be potential rules from the energy suppliers of these bays that if you have charged and you leave your vehicle there, they might be liable to some sort of penalty for leaving the vehicles too long. Yeah, I think we're referring to section 5.3.6. No street controlled parking zones exist. Yeah, I think you're right. There is the 1 hour restrictions on King Street. No return within 1 hour. We'll check that and get that changed. And with regards to signage, yeah, I think we'd said there'd be a two-stage approach. We would look at, first of all, Castle Douglas, Dalbeattie and Kirkcudbright, and then we'd follow on with places like Gatehouse and New Galloway Secondary. So again, we've had to take that approach where we sometimes just prioritise based on population size, and where we know that there's maybe going to be more visitors, and it should be fairly straightforward though. So if we do those three towns first, we can quickly move on and cover the rest of the main towns in the area.
Councillor McFarlane, do you want to respond?
Yeah, thank you for that, and I think you adequately addressed most of them. Just going back to the very first one, I'll give you an example. I've got a hybrid vehicle, which means that I do plug it in from time to time, and when I go in for a meeting at headquarters, I generally park either behind headquarters or in Lowerburn. So if I go to Lowerburn, there's a time restriction for disc for 2 hours. However, my vehicle will take more than 2 hours to charge, and that's the sort of point I'm talking about. So it will take longer than 2 hours to charge, but I then need to go and move it and try and find somewhere else to try and finish charging it. And I'm wondering if we can build in some sort of capacity for making sure that if somebody is in a position like that, that they can get their vehicle charged up appropriately. I don't have a rapid charger, so I don't get the opportunity to do the 1 hour sort of thing. So it's just so that people don't feel that they're going to be penalised for trying to do the right thing. Thanks.
I think that's an important question and point. Thank you. Tony, could you respond?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, that'll certainly be considered. I'm well aware there have been various comments about some of the car parks and EV charging round about the council buildings in terms of time restrictions and people obviously abusing some of these facilities at the moment, just obviously due to the lack of current enforcement that is provided by Police Scotland. We all know that they've got their own sort of high priorities, and the parking isn't one of the main ones at the moment. So it's one of the main reasons we are pursuing decriminalised parking enforcement, that we can take those powers and take control ourselves of how we manage parking in our region. So yeah, that's a good point about the 2 hours and the different charging rates, and it's something we will be working with Fleet as they progress, looking to put more charging points in. Okay.
We do need to consider how we encourage residents and others to have electric vehicles, and in doing that they need to make sure the infrastructure is correct, and so we can get to net zero. Councillor, our youth representative, Stuart Walker.
Wonderful, thank you. I was hoping to highlight the cycle parking on item 5.7.2 on page 47, as in regards to King Street and Castle Douglas, if we did have the proposed cycling parking increase there, will that impact the other plans for parking in the area on the same street, as well as are there any other increases planned for cycle parking, especially in regards to Gatehouse of Fleet, and it is known as a national bike town, so there is a very high need for more cycle parking there. Thank you.
Tony, can you respond?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thanks for your question, Stuart. That's a very good point. There is, I mentioned, there's LUF funding that's being used at the moment, and we're looking at this transport hub up at Market Hill car park in Castle Douglas, and that will be providing some good facilities, covered facilities for cycle. It's actually a small building where you can actually lock your bike overnight and keep it safe. We'll also have a look at other areas along King Street where there's maybe areas that are maybe not off pedestrian walkways, where we can actually put in some, like the small toast racks, just to allow people to park their bikes if they're popping into the shops. Again, the main car park in Gatehouse, that's been looked at for the transport hub, and it will have facilities for cycle parking, and it also have facility for charging electric bikes. So if people are cycling from an area outside of one of these places, they can come in, charge their bike, so they've got enough charge to get back out again. So it's all about linking communities and making sure there's the availability that they can charge their electric bikes. As well as that, the transport hubs, we're also looking at reintroducing the car club. That's where there's cars that you can hire. These will be electric. You can hire them for a day or two. You return them, charge them, and then someone else can use them the next day. They're proven very popular throughout other areas of Scotland. So rather than going to a car hire company, it's a car club, and you can do it all online. If you don't have a car yourself, it just makes it more easily accessible to use these cars. So the transport hubs are considering all these aspects, and cycling is very much part of that.
Any further comments, Stuart?
I would also like to mention the need for some sort of support for cyclists as well in the more rural towns, as a lot of places such as Borg, at least in Dean and Kens, they lie on many of the bike paths that are used and aren't in the best repair, so they do have to use other locations which would normally be used for car parking, etc., just to leave their bike while they're in the town or in a shop, etc. Thank you.
Tony, did you want to respond?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Stuart. That will definitely be a consideration. We'll obviously be focusing on our main population centres initially. Then as we're moving through, we will be looking to utilise as much external active travel funding as well, even if it's for small changes like just introducing some localised cycle parking. But going forward as well, that there will be more opportunity to review our cycle paths, active travel routes, etc., to try and improve them. So it's all part of the bigger active travel strategy, actually, which is it was a 10-year strategy that we're still developing. So, okay, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Lowe.
Thank you for letting me back in, Chair. Our enforcement will only be as good as our road markings. So will we be responsive to be ready with all the lining so that we can enforce the parking? And just for example, currently when we get areas of resurfacing even out of town, it can take a while for the new lines to go in. If we're doing any within towns, and we're covering up yellow lines, blue badge spaces or whatever, are we going to be able to be just more responsive? So as we get towards these parking controls and just generally now, can we get to a point where we are able to use what powers we've got even now for parking and to get those lines done better and quicker?
Tony?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Lowe. Yeah, it's definitely a consideration, existing infrastructure, signage and road markings in terms of the lines where you can park, double yellow lines, etc. So we've got a meeting coming up with our colleagues in our local roads offices with regards to refreshing of lines around the towns and how we can be prepared, ready for when DPE does come in, that we have all the appropriate lining in place. With regards to when we do resurface or surface dress a road, they usually have to be left for at least a month before we would then go back to do the lining. That's why sometimes you might think the lines haven't been put down immediately, but they usually let the surface settle for a month or so before the lines go down. And you're also aware that we do use an external lining contractor that come to the region as and when required, so we don't have our own facilities to do lining. So that has been a bit of a bugbear across the region in the past, that we have to rely on a company coming to our region, and we have to rely on decent weather as well, so they can apply the lining when it's good weather, not in the middle of winter or where we need to come back and then having to carry out maintenance. So yeah, it's definitely a main consideration as part of the DPE process. Thanks.
Yeah.
So is lining therefore part of the budget for DPE, or is one of these offsets onto another budget for consideration?
Tony?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yes, it's part of the. It was identified as part of the original regional parking strategy and the action plan, that obviously we needed money to implement the appropriate infrastructure, the lines. We needed money to then recruit our officers, and we needed some finances as well to have the technology, to have the devices, etc., to enable the officers to go out and issue fines. So there is revenue for year zero, and then once we start implementing and issuing fines, that's when we can start to offset any spend against income.
Okay. Councillor Stitt.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Tony and Ailsa, for the report. Just following up on Councillor McFarlane about disabled bay parking. Loreburn used to be the ideal bit for disabled parking, because my wife carries, I carry a blue badge for my wife because she's partially sighted. Since they put the EV charges in, there's only one bay for disabled. I'll go into that bay and I'll be quite honest, I put my wife's disabled sticker. So if this new law comes in, will I be getting fined for parking in an EV charging with a blue sticker? And following what Councillor McFarlane asked about having to charge his car, if we didn't get something in for members, where are members got to park when they're in a day, like a full council lasting 7 or 8 hours? Will members have to start coming out, or is there got to be allowances made for councillors to park somewhere? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Stitt. Tony, do you have a response?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Stitt. Yeah, I think with regards to the disabled, I wasn't aware there was only the one bay left in the Loreburn car park, so I think that's something we will be looking at. I think that there are still some reviews being undertaken by Ailsa and our team at the moment, and that's definitely one of them that we can look at in future. With regards to members attending meetings at Council HQ, again, we've had this raised to us before, and we will be looking at. I think at the moment it is a public car park, the car park that is behind Council HQ, although it's not signed as that. So we try to deter members of the public using it. It's usually for staff and members to use. So I think going forward in our delivery plan, that's something we'll maybe just have a proper look at, and then maybe just try to understand where you should be parking if you are there all day for meetings, and whether there should be time restrictions on some of these car parks. It might be we could look at some sort of almost like permit or disc for members to use for some of these car parks. But we'll look at different options for that. Okay.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. No further questions? If not, then we'll move to recommendations. 1. Note the invite and participation at the Regional Parking Strategy Delivery Plans Area Committee Members Workshop, Parking Stewartry, paragraphs 4.4 to 4.6. And 2. Agree the content of the draft Regional Parking Strategy Delivery Plan Stewartry report for progressing the final version for approval, adoption at appropriate committee. Paragraphs 4.7 to 4.8 and Appendix 1. And 3. Note the progress being made with the decriminalised parking enforcement, DPE, application for parking enforcement, paragraphs 4.8 to 4.12. Are members happy to agree the recommendations? Thank you, Tony, Elsa. Thank you for joining us. Item 6, Stewartry Area Committee Discretionary Budget 25 to 26 report by Head of Thriving Communities. We now turn to the discretionary grant report for 2025-26. This report is asking us to note the funding available and to agree the key priorities, process and allocations for 2025-26. I'll first ask members to note the total budget allocated to area committees across the region as 312,000 and the amount available for stewartry being £48,048, plus the carryover of £4,805 from 2024 to 2025 budget, resulting in a figure of £52,853 available for allocation in the year 2025-26. Are members happy to note the amount? Members will also note that a member seminar was held on this matter on the 18th of March 2025, where proposed priority areas were identified. This year's priority areas are presented for members' consideration in Appendix 2. Ward Officer Sean O'Toole is available to answer questions. Sean, do you have anything to add before I open the floor to members' comments?
Nothing more to add, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Now open the floor then to members for questions and comments. Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Sean. Thanks for the report. Just a quick question, I suppose, thinking out of the box a bit as a councillor. With regards to page 54, if you see in 4.8, the fourth point down, it states that, you know, we're inviting applications that contribute to the well-being of the community and increase social contact, which we're seeing is so important nowadays. But then if we go to key facilities on page 59, we have all agreed this in the past, that we look to monies towards the benefit of community-owned managed buildings and facilities, which would incorporate an actual physical building as such. But as we're seeing communities change, we're seeing an awful lot more outdoor activities, with sports taking place, even as part of managed groups outside, you know, with things like development of high rocks, community gatherings, etc., which might come under galas and events, but you'd have to specifically organise a gala and event for that. I'm just wondering if there's any level of negotiation or flexibility with regards to community social contact and events. We see that in Kirkcudbright with the car park being used quite a bit, you know, where the toilets are and where the white stand is, the bandstand. I'm sure Kirkcudbright councillors would agree with me on that. So I don't know, do you think we still have to keep that going forward, Sean, as an actual physical building and facility? Or if it was a key facility event that contributed to the well-being of the community and increased social contact, you know, my question is, would there be some level of negotiation, or would we need to bring that back to further committee to renew the actual stipulations, is what I'm asking. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you. Sean, can you respond?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Drysdale. I think that the key facilities component of the discretionary funding came around just to kind of help out the community buildings that are managed and owned by the community themselves, kind of through COVID and through the kind of increased costs. So completely within the gift of members to readdress that and redefine it as you see fit. We can kind of add a clause on there to maybe include, say, key facility events, like you say, but I'm completely within your hands, members. Yeah.
Okay. Other comments? Yep. I would just add as well, talking about the need to have external events, and so far with the good weather, and hopefully with more, there'll be more applications for outdoor events and things, so bearing that in mind. Other questions or comments from members? Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, very brief one. On page 59 and 60, we've got galas and events, and we have 10,853. Now, it says that Castle Douglas, Kirkcudbright and Dalbeattie are all being allocated £2,500. Is that a standard amount that we allocate each year, or how has that been decided on this occasion? Thanks, Sean.
Sean, can you answer that question?
Certainly, Chair. Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. Yep, that's just been a kind of standing since I've kind of taken lead over the kind of lead officer for this fund. That's been the allocation. So kind of always has been, but completely within the gift of members if you want to kind of readdress that somehow. It is kind of just to add, well accepted from the civic days and civic weeks and festivities. So, I don't know if it's too little or too much, but certainly it's being thanked by the groups that are in receipt of it. But completely within the gift of members, if you want to change that around a little.
Would you like to respond?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. No, not challenging it in any way, just getting an understanding as to why it is like that. Do you know how long we've been doing this, please?
Sean?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't know how long it's been set, this figure, certainly since I took the fund on, which has been, what, maybe 5-6 years now, so quite a while.
No further questions or comments. We'll move to recommendations. One is to note that the 312,000 was allocated in the council budget for area committee discretionary budgets in the 2025-26. And two, note that available to Stewartry Area Committee discretionary budget for allocated in 2025-26 will be £52,853 as detailed in paragraph 4.3 and 4.4. And three, agree to allocate funding for key priorities in Appendix 2 and open for applications and the process by which to deliver them. Are members happy to agree the recommendations? Agreed. Item 7. Area Committee Tackling Poverty and Inequalities Budget 2025-26. Report by Head of Thriving Communities. Our final report today asks that we consider how to utilise our Tackling Poverty and Inequalities budget. Recognising the continued need to tackle poverty and inequalities in our communities, our council agreed an allocation of £180,000 to be used by local area committees to provide support to organisations who are working to mitigate and tackle this at a local level with some of our most vulnerable residents. Members are being asked to consider the key priorities, eligibility and criteria, and to establish a fund which will provide support across the Stewartry, focusing the fund on key priority areas based on discussion from the recent member seminar. Members will also be aware that the Tackling Poverty, Inequalities and Housing Subcommittee on the 1st of May, members agreed to apply to up up-to-date data to the formula allocations for this fund. This has resulted in an increase in the funding available here in Stewartry, as outlined in paragraph 4.2 of the report. Sean O'Toole is here via SM Teams to answer members' questions. Questions, comments, members? Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Sean. Just a quick one. I don't know if members agree with me, but in the appendix, and again, Stuart being here is very helpful, and you know, we're listening to the needs of young people more and more in our area, as we're losing so many of you to other areas as you're growing up and moving on. But on page 65, the priorities state support for young people in relation to transport and mental health. I'm just wondering if we can extend that to be in relation to transport, mental health, physical health and sexual health. Really be happy to take on board any feedback from the council rep or any other member here today, but I think it should be extended to that. But I don't know if we have to go through a main committee to extend it to those different factors of a young person's life. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean, can you respond?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Drysdale. No, I don't think we. You are in control of the priorities. You know which ones you want to focus on. So we could add on that, you know, for physical and sexual health onto that statement. I'm sure without any recourse, it'd be fine to do that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Sorry, pardon me. Thank you, Chair. I'll just come back, and then would I be able to ask for members' support on that today, or how would we like to go about that? Through yourself, Chair. Thank you.
Yep. Comments? Are we in support of this recommendation? Councillor Stitt?
I'm happy to support what Councillor Drysdale's proposed.
Good. We're in agreement with that proposal by all members. So thank you for that, Councillor Drysdale. Page 65, there is comment about support for young people in relation to transport and mental health being a key priority, and to add comments about that. Stuart Walker, would you have any further comment?
No direct comment particularly on a lot of it. It's not something which I've got the most awareness on. There was another one of our youth councillors who was more involved in that focus. I can go back and consult with them and then come back to you at a later point, if that's acceptable.
Thank you, Stuart. We'll note that. Okay, we'll now move to recommendations. Note 1, the new revised allocation for Stewartry is £25,614 or 14.23%, giving a total tackling poverty and inequalities budget for 2025-26 of £29,219, as outlined in paragraphs 4.2 and 4.3. Note 2, agree the priorities, eligibility and criteria for the Stewartry Area Committee tackling poverty and inequalities budget for 2025-26 as detailed in the appendix. And 3, agree to open a grant scheme for applications to the Stewartry Area Committee tackling poverty and inequalities budget 2025-26, including the timetable and processes outlined in paragraphs 4.5 and 4.6. All agreed? Claire? Thank you for clarifying that, Claire. We did agree that, yes. So if we can make a note. And Sean, thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate it. Point 8, any other business deemed urgent by the Chair due to the need for a decision. I have no further business, so that concludes the meeting. Could I thank you all for your contributions? Our next meeting will be held on Wednesday, the 17th of September 2025. Enjoy the rest of this day in the sunshine. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.